Ian, thank you very much for making time to share your insights about the other end of the telescope. Now, can you tell us, how did you come up with this idea of writing a book, and this book?
So the whole idea of writing a book was entirely accidental. When I left corporate life in the middle of last year, I was sitting at home and began just to pull some thoughts together, which I posted on LinkedIn. And I was beginning to get a very large number of downloads and views. And several people said to me in that community, well, really, you should bring these essays together and make it a bit of a collection. And from there, the idea was born. I had a huge amount of encouragement from my wife and some other friends. And I just began writing about things that I thought were interesting from an outside-in perspective. I've been inside corporate life for 26, 27 years. And now suddenly I was looking from the outside in, if you like, down the other end of the telescope at it, just looking at how absurd some of the things that we do in large corporate life actually are. And that's how the idea was born.
So you said you started sharing some insights on LinkedIn. What were those insights about?
I think the very first article that I published on LinkedIn was called Organizational Cholesterol, which was all about how organizations' arteries get clogged up and decisions become very slow because we create an enormous amount of bureaucracy, which take an organization from being fast and nimble and agile when they're a startup to being slow and lethargic and thoughtful, too thoughtful maybe, about the decisions they take. So that was the first article, just about why decisions take so long to be made in large organizations and, of course, what you can do to improve it. And that received some very interesting reviews, and off the back of that I began to write some more.
And tell us, when did you start writing?
The book I started writing in about July, August last year. But writing generally, I've been writing since I was a kid. So it's always been something that I've enjoyed, whether it's poetry or short stories and now a business book. But this is the first thing that I've actually taken all the way through the process and had published.
Now, you've been the CEO of, I believe, Africa's largest IT company, Business Connection. And chapter 1 of your book is all about the life and the tribulations of the CEO. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is it what are the lessons that you learned as CEO?
Being the chief executive officer of a large company can be a very lonely place. You are trying all the time to make the best trade-offs, the best choices that are presented to you, whether they be leadership choices, whether they be investment decisions, whether they be marketing decisions, and so on and so forth. And whilst you get a band of trusted lieutenants around you to help you make those decisions, the reality is that that decision lies with you. And I think one of my real observations was that corner office could become very, very lonely and quite isolated. And one of the things I write about in the book is the need for organisations to more thoughtfully think about how do they create scaffolding around their CEO to make sure they don't feel some of those things. Now, how does a board lean in and help? How does the executive committee work? How do the people around the CEO, maybe not in the business, actually be able to support as well? And I think it's something that's ill understood, and when I sat down to write about it and thought, well, I'll see what other people have written, there's very little about it. And I think one of the reasons why there is so little about it is that to show some vulnerability when you are a CEO is a very tricky thing to do. Because shareholders may read that vulnerability as uncertainty, your competitors may see that vulnerability as an opportunity, and so on. So CEOs by nature tend to show very little vulnerability in office. I think when you step back out of it and are more reflective, to share some of those lessons, I hope, will be useful for those guys and girls that are in the roles at the moment to think about how can they do this job better.
So is it fair to say there's basically no architecture, no plan, no blueprint for onboarding a CEO?
I think different organisations onboard CEOs in different ways. The easy onboarding is the technical stuff. Where are the toilets? Where's the restaurant? What's the business decisions that we're looking at today? How do we do things around here? The onboarding of the practical things, the business-related decisions, I think is quite straightforward. But the onboarding of a CEO to how they manage themselves in their role, what it means to be a CEO for that organisation, I think is less well understood.
And Ian, tell us, have you always wanted to be a CEO, or was it more of an organic development?
It's a brilliant question. So I was reflecting on this quite a lot as I was writing the book. And when I was growing up, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was very clear in my mind. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to get in one of those very fast jets, do the barrel rolls and the Eelman turns, firing cannons all the time at the enemy. And I put myself through an assessment process with the Royal Air Force in the UK, and they found that my eyesight wasn't good enough to be a fighter pilot. I was about 17, 18, and the dream was shattered. And I regrouped and I thought about what I wanted to do. I went to university, and then as part of that, it was a very conscious decision to move into a corporate role. I enjoyed economics and commerce. And the second that I'd actually joined my first large organisation, which was Ford Motor Company, nearly 30 years ago now, I was clear in my mind that I wanted to run the place, not just work in the place. So I think right from the early days of my corporate life, I was clear that I wanted to be the CEO, yes.
And how were you, during your tenure as CEO, how were you handling the daily pressures that come with it? How did you balance your work and life?
Yeah, I mean, I think work-life balance means different things to different people, and I don't think there's a generic one-size-fits-all answer. For me, it meant getting up very early in the morning. I used to be very well known in the office when my 4:30 kind of starts. I'd clear my inbox through early when there was no interruptions. I'd try and get a chance to take the children to school. I'd get to the office, come home around 7, and then try and not work in the evening. So that was my version of the work-life balance. But the reality is that although you're thinking you're spending time with the family as well as a lot of time at work, when you're with the family, you're so tired and often distracted by the business issues. It's not quality time anyway. So I don't think I did find that work-life balance, and it was one of the big reasons for stepping back out of the corporate life after so many years, was you've got to look around you and understand what really is important.
And what would you say are the biggest challenges today for CEOs?
I think there are 2 or 3 very obvious challenges for CEOs anywhere. The pace and speed of information sharing and things happening in the economy has never been greater. So the need to make decisions quickly, fairly, with balance and with understanding is a tricky thing to pull off. And I think the breakneck speed of commerce today forces you into a very tight rhythm. So I think number 1 is that speed of decision making, but being balanced and rational around that. I think the second thing is balancing the needs to build strong, enduring leadership teams with a strong, enduring strategy, but the short-term pressures of the shareholder that results in 90 days, 180 days, 365 days. Now, to build a new leadership team, to put a new strategy in place for an annual cycle is almost impossible. So the ability of the CEO to influence those shareholders and the board, to be able to make sure they get a longer horizon, I think is a massive, massive challenge today. So I think I put those 2 up there as the 2 top challenges.
And Ian, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them they should focus on for future-proofing their potential CEO career?
I think one of the things that I've really learned over the past 25 years or so is to be very conscious about your personal relevance to a business and the relevance of your business to the economy. And by that I mean you've got to have a set of capabilities and skills that are relevant for the way in which business gets done today. There's no point worrying about whether you can use a typewriter in 2019, but it might have been really important in 1980. So your personal relevance and skill sets and capabilities, I think you've always got to be very thoughtful around. But neither do you want to end up with a career that's based in an industry or an industry sector that's becoming increasingly irrelevant. So again, if you end up trapped in a legacy business, the opportunity for you to prove that you're relevant becomes less and less easy. So personal relevance and then your relevance within your business that's relevant to an economy is something I think you should become very conscious about.
Now, how do you envisage will the role of the CEO change in the future?
I think the role of the CEO in the future will be very much the same as it is today, and also very much different. Same because the continual requirement to balance those decisions, to lead, to create a strategic direction, to bring people around you will not change. But different because I think the speed, the flexibility, the agility, and the pace that you need to engender an organisation is always going to be increasing. And that may force some different ways of making the decisions, and it certainly forces a different cadence and rhythm to things like governance and so on that you put in place.
And what would you say will be the key competencies that you would look for in a future CEO?
I think the key qualities very quickly for CEO boil down to two or three things. I think number one, and my mother always told me this, that you were given two ears and one mouth in that proportion for a reason. And I think the ability to be able to listen twice as much as you talk is something that we very quickly lose if you're not careful. So to listen to understand as a CEO, I think, is a key quality. Then to be thoughtful, and then when you make a call, make a call. I think the second thing as a CEO is a weak no and a weak yes are very problematic statements. So always give a strong no rather than a weak yes. So I'll give you a very good example. When you are in leadership positions, you'll often get people say, yeah, it's a great idea. Why don't you go and do some more research around that, and then we'll make a decision at the next steering committee or the next executive committee. That's not a yes. That's actually a weak no. It's somebody forestalling the decision for another day. You go off and do some more work. You waste some more time, you waste some more energy. Meanwhile, the clock speed of your organisation is busy diminishing. So I think rather a strong no than a weak yes. And learning the skill and the ability to do that, I think, is really important. And the final one, of course, is being able to communicate clearly and with conviction and passion about the direction that you want to take the organisation into. The ability to actually make sure that people really understand where we headed, why we headed there, how are we going to get there, when are we going to get there. They're critical answers that you need to be able to gift the organisation so that everybody knows where they're going.
Now, Ian, your book was released, I think, a couple of weeks ago on Kindle. It's already climbed to the bestseller list in at least one category. So, what did you do to promote the book, and what do you attribute the success, your Amazon bestseller success, to?
Thank you, Nick. You're very kind. I mean, the reality is that I'm learning by doing here. And myself and my team were just looking at, so how do we position the book? Who are the type of people that may want to buy the book? And then working within that, how do we use particularly social media to spread awareness of what it's about with an audience that may have a propensity to buy it. And you're right, very quickly we've made the top 100 in the Amazon lists for strategy leadership books from a standing start 2.5 weeks ago. So somehow we're getting it right. We're continuing to sort of look at how we improve on that. But the really exciting thing about getting it right is that every cent we make from the book is being donated to Christel House, which is a not-for-profit school. So the success here is creating an opportunity to raise funds for a very worthy cause. So that's giving us huge gratification.
When you say not-for-profit school?
So there's a school called Christel House, which is based down in Ottery near Cape Town. I've been on the board there for several years. We have 1,000 pupils. It's entirely funded through charitable donations. And we have a thriving school, but we need cash all the time. So I'm generating royalties from this book. And all the royalties from the book get donated straight through to Christel House. And for every 1,000 or so books that we can sell, that's a child's education secured for a year. So it's a great news story.
And now tell us, what would you like your readers to take away from your book? If there was one thing.
The book covers many different topics. It talks about leadership, it talks about strategy, it talks about sustainability. But if there was one key takeout message, it would be get stuff done. There's no point just talking about leadership. There's no point talking about strategy. There's no point talking about sustainability if you don't make things happen. So the central tenet of the book is me trying to distill the last 25 years or so of experience into some ways of making things happen. That's what I'd like to take out of the book. Get stuff done.
Now, Ian, how can our listeners follow you and how should they connect with you?
So we've been using LinkedIn as the key platform for the book, and I'm finding that an incredibly rich platform. Had it not been for my followers and connections on LinkedIn, I would not have written this book. So to all of those guys and girls out there that have been following me, that have given me the encouragement, thank you. Because without that, this book would not have existed. I'm thoroughly enjoying the interaction, and that's the key platform for me that we're using at the moment. And I'll take all encouragement, I'll take all opportunity to learn how to do things better on that platform from everybody that's listening, because together we can really share the experiences and drive greater awareness.
Now, Ian, last but not least, what does the future hold for yourself?
So I've taken a very conscious decision to step right back from corporate life. I'm spending my time at the moment as much as possible with the family, which I'm really enjoying. We've relocated down to the rural parts of the Cape. And within that, to make sure I can pay the bills, I am doing some advisory work for a few boards. I'm doing some speaking work, and of course I've begun to write some books. And that's how I'm filling my time. And at the moment, I'm incredibly satisfied and content with that, and long may it continue.
So you're not missing the corporate life?
I miss some elements of the corporate life. I miss a timetable and a beat to the day sometimes. So whilst it may sound crazy for a guy that stepped off the 4:30 in the morning email trail, the reality is, as a large corporate beast, your day is very timetabled for you, from your first meeting to your last meeting to the phone calls in the evening and so on and so forth. When you step out of that, you've now got 8-9 hours in front of you with a lot less rhythm and structure to it. And one of my big learnings over the past few months has been how to structure a productive day, but a more fulfilling day. So as an example, that's been a great learning and something that I'm really looking forward to doing even more of.
Well, Ian, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and the future of innovation.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, and thanks to all your listeners.